Nice to be here.
I just hesitate to ask, what is that thing?
It's a good way to keep you and your garment bag together without hurting your fingers on the hanger. It's called a handle. And for $5, you just slip this on, tighten the gadget at the top, and then have an easy and durable way to carry your garment bag as you race for your plane.
Boy, can I use that.
Terrific
Gee,
idea.
that's terrific. What else are we talking
Today
about?
we're going to talk about affordable vacation getaways for you and the family.
Oh, and what a good time of the year to talk about that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Marty. I'm Gary Collins. Today we'll also meet an actress who's got it all. Beauty, talent, a fine career, and now a brand new baby, and that's Jane Seymour. Dr. Rosenfeld is going to update his file on fever, and he's going to tell us why we get it and why we may even need it. My co-host Pat Mitchell attends a special class, a cooking class for the visually impaired.
Being blind or partially sighted is a challenge in the kitchen that these enthusiastic students are determined to meet. Today, Gary, we'll find out how certain recipes, a good teacher, and a positive attitude can help make cooking a very pleasurable experience for these very special students.
And I've been invited to lunch today by David Horowitz. You know what that means? I mean, if he fights back at the restaurant like he does at the supermarket, I think I'm in for an experience. I mean, he couldn't cause a scene, though, would you, David? You wouldn't embarrass me in a restaurant.
Why would I do something like that? But I'm going to show you how to fight back and keep your self-respect intact when you sit down to eat.
I don't think I can eat after that. All this and more in today's edition of Our Magazine. Anyone who watched the critically acclaimed miniseries East of Eden learned to love and loathe my first guest. Today she's with us in a very different role, that of mother and newlywed. Would you welcome Jane Seymour? What was the character's name in East of Eden you played?
Kate.
Katie Trask?
Yes,
Yeah.
Kathy Trask in the beginning, and then she called herself Kate when she became a fully fledged prostitute.
But you're right. We did love you and we did loathe you. I guess that's the secret of success in doing a part, isn't it?
Well, the evil parts are always the best
Are they?
ones. Oh yes, you can get your teeth into it, and you can.
Well, I
it's
think
more
Julie
complex
Andrews said that too.
Personality. No, I loved it. It was a
Yeah.
wonderful role.
Something happened to you since then. As a matter of fact, Time magazine included you in celebrities being involved in the big baby boom.
Yes.
And in there, well, you were really the baby of the group in terms of age and everything, but they said in there that at 31 you decided to have a child.
Ancient mothers.
Well,
Yes.
I don't know. It seems to be on the rise. Women with careers who choose to wait.
I thought I was unique. I thought I didn't realize there was a baby boom going on until I went to the exercise class for pregnancy and found that there was almost no room there.
They were all expecting
Everyone's
mothers,
expecting mothers, yes.
Yeah.
And then at the Golden Globes the other day, everyone was pregnant. All these actresses, Sissy Spacek's pregnant, and
Yeah, she was included too.
And Jacqueline Smith.
Right. May I ask you why you waited to 31? Was it career or
I had
was
to
it?
find a husband.
Well, now wait a minute.
I mean, I found one before, it's true, but I had to find the right one, the one
Yeah.
that I want to stay with for the rest of my life.
And you found him.
I found him, and I was doing a play on Broadway, Amadeus, and we decided we wanted to start a family. And in fact, we got married after I got pregnant on purpose. We decided to try having a family. That was about in March. And I knew that I couldn't go away on a honeymoon till July when I finished doing the play. And
So it really became a matter of convenience. You knew.
Yes.
you knew for dead sure you were going to marry this fella.
I knew for dead sure I was going to marry
Yeah.
him in July. I didn't know for dead sure that I'd managed to get pregnant first try, but I did.
I want a couple of quotes that I.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, they're not awful quotes. But it's interesting. We've talked about your husband. His name is David Flynn.
Yes.
And he's a financial manager. Does he also manage you, or does
That's
he
how
manage
we
your
met.
affair? Oh, that's how you met.
Yes, I hired him, his company, Traubner and Flynn, and there are a lot of very famous personalities who hired
All right.
him.
Chances are, this is according to Jane, my husband will be American. British men are so stuffy. American men have wonderful minds. They're like computers. So much information is stored inside. All those sports scores and so on.
You see, this is called British humor, which really doesn't go down very well in America. I've given up on British humor.
Is David American?
Well, he actually was born in Canada.
Oh, in preparing for your baby, her name is Katie Jane. Were you somewhat conventional? Do all the things that most mothers do?
To have the baby?
Yeah. No, I mean beyond that. Oh, boy, I do get into it, don't I?
Oh, you mean,
No.
did
you exercise? Did you do all the things that mothers do? Take vitamins?
Well, actually, I sort of went on overkill, rather. I decided that this was my production for the year. And since I was no longer going to be treading the boards on Broadway, that I was going to really make an effort to keep in trim and everything. And in fact, I only put on 22 pounds. And I took up tennis in the beginning, and then I worked out at the Jane Fonda exercise program for pregnant ladies. Had a lot of fun there. Did that about 3 times a week. And
did you feel that all that stuff really helped you and helped the baby?
I'm in better shape than I was before. I mean, sort of muscle tone-wise.
What kind of shape is Katie Jane in?
She's in great shape.
Why don't we meet her?
Oh, great. You want to see her?
Yes, I do. You betcha.
Is she awake?
Here's Katie Jane. Oh, look at this.
Little mouse. Look, she's stretching.
Well, I don't know.
She's 7 weeks old today.
Does your husband have red hair?
No, none of us have red hair.
I think we better close the interview on that.
She's also got one eye. You see that eye is changing? It's got a little splodge of brown. I have 2 different colored eyes. So
You sure do.
She has my eyes.
Yeah,
These
but then you
weird
said that
eyes.
was one of your strengths, imperfection.
Imperfection.
About
Well, she
everything.
has imperfection.
Yeah, she's adorable. Thank you very much, Jane. for
Thank
being
you.
here. Great. Jane Seymour. In a moment, my co-host Pat Mitchell attends a cooking class for the blind.
In sports, you hear the word challenge all the time. But this Sunday at Santa Anita, the last Sunday of the season, you can see the challenge. The San Juan Capistrano. The world's top horses compete over a course unlike any other. They run down this hill to the only right-hand turn in American racing, then left behind those trees, cross the dirt track, and still have a full mile to go. Courage and stamina. The words really do apply this Sunday. It's the Capistrano, and it's as if Santa Anita has saved the very best for last.
Do you know that America's most beautiful rose garden is right here in Southern California? Now you can see thousands of roses in full bloom, more than 400 different varieties at the internationally famous Pageant of Roses Garden at Rose Hills Memorial Park, nearby at Whittier. The garden is open every day during daylight hours. Admission and parking are free. It's a beautiful place. Come see it.
I'm Stephanie Edwards here at a Lucky supermarket where shoppers are convinced they're saving money. But how much? Well, we asked the shoppers here at Lucky to compare their normal week shopping with any other supermarket. And here's what we found.
At Lucky, I saved $4.45.
I saved $7.05 shopping here at Lucky's.
I saved $4.24 yesterday at Lucky's.
With savings like these, you owe it to yourself to compare. Lucky, the discount supermarket.
Tonight, when you go into your kitchen to prepare dinner, you will probably think about this next story. My co-host Pat Mitchell has joined a very special group of people for a cooking lesson. It's special because they're all at least partially blind.
Gary, this is Lowry's California Center, where the laboratories and test kitchens of Lowry Foods are located. It's lovely, isn't it? A wonderful place to take a cooking class, and that's why we're here. To attend a special cooking class taught by Claudia O'Brien. It's special because their students' needs are special.
Here, I'll just put that over your head. Hold on to your breath.
Claudia has been at Lowry's for 11 years, and she finds that teaching the blind how to cook can be very rewarding. Her students today are from the Braille Institute, where they've all taken courses in home living. Most are already adept at cooking. They just want to refine those skills and share with others what they've learned through practical experience.
I want to tell you a little bit about the dish we're going to make today before we get started. Let's talk about what it's going to turn out like when it's finished. It's called Tijuana Torte, and you know, in Europe, a torte is many layers of something, and usually it's a dessert. Well, this is sort of a Mexican version of an European tort, and we call it Tijuana tort. In fact, if you all feel the trays in front of you, there are ingredients and equipment that you're going to need. You've got 3 knives on the tray, and they're just sharpened, so be careful of those.
This recipe requires chopping, grating, identifying ingredients, cooking, and assembling. Chores that are especially difficult for the blind. But these students were undaunted. They didn't even hesitate to stand over a flame or use a sharp knife.
How do you do that? Not being able to see what... Very good answer, Lynn.
Do you notice how he runs the knife down his finger to tell where he is on the onion?
I have less chance of cutting myself than most people will see.
Why is that?
I don't take it for granted that I know what I'm doing.
Most of them identify canned goods by size or by putting them in alphabetical order on a shelf. Another surefire way is to label each can with Braille tape.
I would think the Braille tape would be the easiest method of remembering.
It probably is, but it's surprising how much you remember. Having a good memory is a very important thing, and I think this develops as you need it.
I find this can be painful. I'm always getting my knuckles caught in those things.
Well, when it gets down to a little tiny piece towards the end, I just eat that. I just don't keep on grating. That's all. That's why I save my knuckles.
Now, I know you've always liked cooking, right? I mean, you've always done a lot of it.
I always have.
Have you changed the way you cook with your sight?
Not a great deal. See, I only lost my eyesight when I was about 60 years old, so I had done a lot of cooking at that time. So I didn't have to change, really, because I just do it. It's like playing golf and things like this. You just, by intuition, you know, you just keep on doing just like you've always done.
Your wife is blind, too. Does she cook?
No, she doesn't like to eat. She doesn't like to cook. So it's left up to me to keep from starving to death. I cook.
Most students here say that the toughest part of cooking is judging a flame. Dealing with anything hot is always a challenge.
I think pouring coffee is still difficult for me. Measuring is difficult, but still those things can be overcome with the proper tools.
And you obviously are overcoming it.
Yes.
The liquid is cold, you can pour it down your finger. But, you know, she said pouring coffee. You can't pour that down your finger.
That's right. So what do you do? I mean, take very careful aim.
I have to be very careful. And I do have some vision, which helps a lot. Some vision is so much more than none.
That's true. How can you tell when that meat is brown?
I can just barely see that it's brown, but I can tell by the consistency and the time it has been cooking whether it is done or not.
Oh, my goodness. The consistency is different with ground? Let me see if I can do
when it's raw, it feels quite different.
See, it's very firm. Now, another friend of mine would pick it up from the pan and feel it to see if it was readily crumbling.
That could end
up. Or taste it.
Yes, you burn your fingers.
Another challenge is measuring ingredients and assembling the dish neatly.
I'm just spreading it around, and I'm just feeling and hoping it's in the right place.
Well, wouldn't you rather use your fingers?
Yes. Much.
That's definitely what I would do.
Much
First of all, you
rather
can
get
feel
in
how
there.
much you have
Right,
there if you
sure.
used your hand.
You're going to see how deep it is.
I think you've got the easiest job, Betty.
I do too, because I can use my fingers.
Yeah.
But actually, when you're talking about how do you know, a lot of it comes to weight also. It gets so that you can feel the weight either of a cup or whatever you're measuring.
It's a way of thinking about cooking that you don't have to do, and that we sort of take for granted if you have sight.
There's a way of thinking about everything that you don't have to do if you have sight.
Of course, in your own home, you get used to everything. And you know
ready for the
everything is,
cheese?
and you can feel of it very and know
I
what
could
they're
probably do
doing.
this much faster by myself because George is so slow.
That's part of a cooking class.
That's why, sure, absolutely. Okay, Betty, a tortilla.
Oh, a tortilla.
Now who's slow?
That's why it's easier in your kitchen. You don't have to listen to anybody else.
That's right. See, there you are. Another thing is reading recipes. You have problems in trying to find out what you're supposed to be doing.
Reading Braille is difficult, too, because if your fingers are dirty, you're getting extra dots. And instead of a half a cup, you're going to get a quarter of a cup.
You have to go wash your hands.
Wash your hands
each
before you
ingredient.
read, right.
Well, the way everyone proceeded to cook this recipe, I just found it hard to believe that they didn't all have perfect vision. I came here to learn how the blind cook in the kitchen and to sample the finished product. But I came away learning a lot more.
I want to thank all of you for letting us attend your cooking class today. I know that we learned things that we can take home and use in our own kitchens. But mostly I want to thank you for showing us that they are all forms of seeing. And what you see with your heart and your spirit is an inspiration to all of us. I toast to you.
And a toast to you, Pat. That was wonderful. For your information, Lowry's recipes for the blind are available on cassette, in Braille, or in large or regular type. Have you ever wondered how to get your child into commercials? You're going to find out right after this commercial. Watch.
He's done it! He's done it! Clyde Wright has pitched the first no-hitter in Anaheim Stadium!
Moments like that can't be taken away. But for me, my drinking spoiled my victories and eventually my pitching career. I turned to Raleigh Hills Hospital for help. Because of Raleigh Hills and a treatment plan, I don't drink anymore, and my life is better. These guys think so. I'm their pitching coach.
Call Raleigh Hills in the San Fernando Valley. Call now.
When chicken cacciatore is cooked to its savory best, you can practically taste it with your eyes. It's the same with Home Pride Buttertop Wheat Bread. When you see the rich ingredients like nature's own wheat, bran, and honey, and see how we split the top and add real creamery butter just before baking, you know how delicious this wheat bread is going to taste. Home Pride Buttertop, wheat or white, you can practically taste it with your eyes.
Why are millions now doing their own pest control with Rid-A-Bug?
I use Rid-A-Bug because it's cheaper than paying a professional.
Most aerosol bug sprays have no lasting power. Rid-A-Bug's professional strength lasts for months.
Rid-A-Bug's easy to use. I spray where and when I want to.
Rid-A-Bug is water-based, so it's non-flammable. Doesn't stain either.
It's cheaper.
Lasts for months.
It's easier.
And it's water-based.
That's why millions are now doing their own pest control with Rid-A-Bug.
Jenny Clark, raise your right hand and look at the dirt on your sofa.
But I vacuum.
Vacuuming's not enough. You need Woolite Upholstery Cleaner. It cleans the rubbed-in dirt your vacuum can't get.
Woolite. That's a name I trust.
Spray, sponge in, let dry, vacuum.
I'm so clean here, I'll do the whole sofa.
Great for chairs and pillows, too. Woolite Upholstery Cleaner cleans the rubbed-in dirt your vacuum can't get.
Raise your right hand and see.
Whenever somebody sees your children, do they or do your relatives or friends, do they insist that he or she belongs on television? I mean, do total strangers stop you in the supermarket and say, boy, that little boy of yours should be doing commercials? If you're intrigued by the idea, but you hesitate to make the plunge with your child, we've asked talent agent Richard Galley of Sutton, Barth, and Venari here in Los Angeles to clear up some of the doubts and offer a few warnings, which are kind of important. Well, let's just start with the basics. What qualities are needed for a youngster? And now we're talking about what age do kids get involved in commercials?
Well, you start with maybe from birth. Every once in a while, there'll be a need in a commercial for a baby. You see them for diaper commercials, things like that. But the basic age is from 6 years on up. And I think the quality that you really look for is, number one, that the child wants to do it. It's very interesting. There was a survey done recently of what kids really wanted to do most, and it came out that they wanted to be on a TV commercial. Now, that interests me because as a young child growing up, we didn't even have television. So all of a sudden, you realize that this age of children being born with television every day is a very important factor in their life.
If we've made the decision to go ahead and get our children involved in it, or our child, what's the first thing we have to do?
I would think the first thing you would want to do is to maybe take a Polaroid of your child. Do nothing more than that so that there can be some kind of representative picture of your child without any great expense at all, and then send that to the various agencies. And you can easily get a list of that from, let's say, SAG, or that are franchise agencies that are reputable.
So you're talking about the Screen Actors Guild?
The Screen Actors
Just
Guild.
contact them and they give you
and you can get a list of franchise agents that basically deal with young people. As we were discussing, not all agencies deal with young people. Some are only for adults, some are only for commercials, some are for commercials and theatricals.
What are the big commercial centers? There's Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago. Are there others, or just those three?
And Texas is beginning to do a lot of work also, and Florida does a lot of work.
What about advantages for a career, or not a career, but just doing commercial work for youngsters?
Well, I think one of the really good points is the fact that even though they might not make a career out of it, they learn to have confidence, able to, if they're going on an interview situation later on in life where they have to meet people or they're interviewing for a job, I think the opportunity of meeting exciting people and being challenged. And a lot of these children, you know, are the type of child in class where might easily be bored. So necessarily this challenges their energy. And this, I wanted to make a point, especially here in California, that with the labor laws, that the children are very protected, and that there are only, you know, certain hours that they can work depending on their ages.
Well, not, you know, one of the benefits, obviously, is to make enough money to put yourself through college. How much money are we talking about on an average?
It varies, but I would say, you know, depending anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, depending on the commercial. I mean, sometimes you may not make quite that much. You never know whether it goes on the air or not, but certainly the potential is there.
Yeah, and also we're not talking about 5 days a week working on a television series or working in a movie. This is, what, a couple of days at the most?
Usually 2 or 3 days at the very most. Average is 1 day, and they have school during that time also.
You brought with you today one of your clients, and he's just a charming young man, and I do say young man, and I'd like the audience to take a look at his commercial. So let's roll that.
Great.
Instant Quaker oatmeal comes in flavors so good that you know what we're gonna do, Timmy?
What?
We're gonna make a
hot cereal lover out of you. Out of you.
Out of him?
With apples and cinnamon.
Apples and cinnamon? Raisins and spice? Raisins?
Maple and brown sugar. And everything nice. We're gonna make a hot cereal lover out of you with instant Quaker oatmeal.
You did it!
Ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome Daniel Brown? Hello, Danny. How are you? Was that fun doing that commercial?
Yeah.
Yeah? How much time did you have to spend doing it? Do you remember?
About a couple of hours.
A couple of hours? That's all?
Yeah.
Huh?
That's all.
Richard?
Well, I think he spent a whole day there, but actually in front of the camera, maybe how many hours? About 1 or 2, right?
What's the best part of being in commercials?
Well, the best part of being in a commercial, that my director's nice, and that I get my own dressing room.
Oh.
He's very impressed today.
He said upstairs that he's not leaving his dressing room. He likes it. Yeah. Have you got any brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I got a brother.
Yeah. How old is he?
He's 11.
Yeah. What does he think about you being in commercials?
Well, he thinks I'm good in commercials.
Yeah. You know, that's another area, Richard, kind of sibling jealousies and rivalry. Is that a problem, or how do you cope with that?
It is sometimes, but I think you deal with it. As a former school teacher, I also remember, you know, teaching different ages of the same family, generations, that you have some that succeed at one thing and some that succeed at something else. I think what's important about Daniel is that we have a good self-image, that he feels good about himself, and he can tell you about whether, if he doesn't get something, how he feels too.
How do you feel when you don't get a commercial?
Well, I feel kind of sad.
Yeah? Well, how long does it take you to get over feeling sad?
Well...
Little oatmeal and you feel great, huh?
Yeah.
What do you want to do when you get bigger?
Well, I want to be a pilot.
You mean an honest-to-goodness pilot? You mean like work for an airline or fly in the Air Force? Boy, that's great. But you have to get a little stronger to do that, don't you? Well, Daniel, it's nice having you here. Richard, thank you very much for being here. Good luck. Thank you very much. Coming up next, rip-offs at the restaurant as David Horowitz joins me for lunch. I wonder if he's going to pick up the check.
We'll return to Our Magazine in just a moment.
Now, I know this is true because David Horowitz told me. The fact is, 150 million people eat out at least once a day. And you can be sure that when David books a table, the restaurant gets away with nothing. And if you don't believe me, watch as David Horowitz, host of TV's Fight Back, fights back over my lunch. How are you, David?
I'm just great, Gary. But you know something about restaurants?
Right.
We allow ourselves to be intimidated in restaurants like nowhere else. When it comes to food, we allow ourselves to be pushed around. If the food isn't good, or we're overcharged for it, or our reservations aren't ready, we allow us to push us around in restaurants. And it really is, to me, distasteful to see how people are treated in restaurants.
Well, it's easy for you to say.
Well, I mean, we all go there for a good time.
What happens, for example, if reservations, you want a table, all right, and you're not David Horowitz?
I feel it's fair to wait at least 15 minutes for your table. And if you don't get your table in 15 minutes, talk to the maitre d' about it. I also think in restaurants where they do not have reservations, you should call ahead and ask how crowded it is before you come in and gripe. I also resent being buffaloed into the bar in restaurants where they make a reservation they can't honor and they push into the bar with the salted nuts and the pretzels and the drinks, and you wait there 45 minutes to an hour.
But isn't that all part of the scheme? They make a lot of money off of drinks.
Their highest profit is in the bar. But you know something? I'm there to have a good time, and if I'm not going to have a good time, I'm going to maintain my self-respect by walking out of that place, but letting them know why I'm leaving and maybe never going back.
All right, now let's assume you get your table.
Right.
Within the time frame allowed here, and you don't like it.
Well, first of all, it's at a restaurant that you know. When you make your reservation, ask them if the table you usually like to sit at is available. And if it isn't, let them let you know up front. But if they shove you in a table that's right by the kitchen door where the door keeps swinging back and forth, that's not a good place to sit. And I'd say, I really would rather sit someplace else.
Yeah.
And any good restaurant that appreciates you as a customer will take care of you. And if they don't, that's your answer. Go somewhere else.
Okay.
But let them know about it.
All right, now, we were just looking at the menu.
That's right.
And are there are there laws concerning menus?
There are. And there are very strong laws about misrepresentation. For instance, the expression I like is, I saw it on a menu, the fish you eat today slept last night in Chesapeake Bay. It's that fresh. If the fish is that fresh, it better have jet lag when it's on my plate, Gary.
But how do you know?
You don't know unless you ask. And if they say fresh on the menu, you ask if it's fresh. And if you eat fish, you can tell the difference between a piece of fish that's fresh and maybe one that's frozen. Or if it's flash frozen, it might be a little more difficult. But I ask those questions. Now, in cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C., they have very strong truth in menu advertising and very strong enforcement of it. You have to tell the truth in everything from whether you're serving butter to cream in the coffee to whatever. It has to be the truth. Otherwise, they can get nailed for it.
Look, David, I'm losing my appetite. Let's order, okay?
Okay, waiter.
Good day, gentlemen.
Hi.
My name is Charles. Before I take your order, I'd like to tell you about a couple specials that the chef has prepared today. We have fresh Boston scrod sauteed in butter. We have a choice of New York cut steak or prime rib of beef served with baked Idaho potato, sour cream, and chives.
Yeah. Now, see, they do that in, you know, pretty good restaurants.
All right.
Right?
Now, the specials. Did you ask him what these specials cost?
No, nobody's ever told me what they cost.
Well, it's polite to ask. Don't think you shouldn't ask because it's your money you're paying for. And the specials, I feel, should never cost more than the top item on the menu.
I always think a special is something they're trying to get rid of.
No, that's the special of the day.
Oh, it's not.
The other thing is that he mentioned things like New York cut steak.
Right.
Now, would you ever think to ask him what the New York cut steak is in terms of the grade of beef? Now,
why should I do that?
Let me show you an example. It doesn't matter. Let me show you an example, Gary. I'm going to hold this meat up.
Listening to this?
Now, the waiter's listening to it. Oh. Here is a New York cut steak.
Yeah.
Now, the first one you see here is the prime. Now, that sells for $9.87 a pound, all right? That's the prime meat. The middle one is the choice, which sells for $3.49 a pound. And the third one is the commercial ungraded cut. Now, if you get that commercial ungraded cut, it might not only not taste as good, but look what you're getting.
Which one were you going to give me?
I'd have to ask the chef.
Yes, see, they don't know.
All right, now let me ask him a question.
And the chef tells him, and the chef can tell him whatever he wants to tell him.
Is the Idaho baked potato from Idaho?
California russet.
Aha. That's not truth in menu. What about the chives?
He didn't say baked Idaho, did he?
Yes, he did. What about the
did?
chives? What about the chives?
Well, they're actually the onion tops.
Onion greens instead of real chives. What about, is it butter or is it margarine?
No, butter it is.
It is butter. Okay, that's one truthful thing. But you see something, Gary? You got to ask those questions. Price. What is it? What's the grade of the meat? And don't feel that you're interrogating him. You want to get what you pay for. Now, another thing to be
Charles,
careful
look,
of.
we're going to need a couple of seconds here after this.
Give us a break, Charles. Thank you. The other thing is the wine. Now, we go into a
What the
restaurant.
heck's wrong with the wine?
Nothing. But you ask for the house wine? How do you know what the house
I
wine
didn't
is?
ask for the house
All right,
wine.
well, a lot of people do because we don't want to pay the fancy price for the stuff in the menu.
You're taking me to lunch. I thought we'd have a wine list.
All right, well, we don't have a wine. We have the house wine, Gary.
Okay.
Now, how do you know what that house wine is and what you're paying for it?
Well, I assume that they're going to give me a fairly nice house wine.
Well, you don't know. I asked for the brand, I asked what it's going to cost if it's not on the menu, and I asked to taste it. Because you never know what this house wine is going to taste like, Gary. I always ask to get a little taste, and any good menu will let you taste the wine. Any good restaurant will let you taste the wine.
If I fall off my chair, you're not going to drink some.
No,
huh?
I mean, you don't even really have to taste it, but you might not want that.
Smells great.
Now, you know, we
Fruity, good aroma.
All right, and it's probably
No,
a buck
but
and a
you're
half a
right.
glass. You got to ask those questions. I was in a restaurant where a guy was ordering house wine. The check came, he almost choked. The house wine was $15 a bottle, and it was terrible.
Oh, see, you assume it's going to be
That's
a lower
right.
price. Well, the heck
And it
with
isn't.
this.
Ask that.
Let's get the check.
Let's get the check.
That's what I
Waiter?
said.
Oh, did you say that?
Yes.
Let's get the check. All right.
Well, what do we get the check for? We didn't order anything.
That's right. We need anything.
All right, which brings up a good point.
He was honest.
Yes.
He was
Would
honest.
you feel hurt if, after all of this, we decided just to get up and leave?
Yes.
Okay.
You got to.
Put you in this guy's debt. Now, let's talk about
Not
tip.
only that, but when you're looking at the check, when you're signing, the waiter is always looking. I hate that. The eyes as you're signing your charge slip, how much the
Oh,
tip
yeah,
is.
they're watching you, sure.
And you know, my rule of
It's
thumb
like
is...
potty training. Goes back to that.
Right.
You got to do a good job with that
That's
check.
right. But my rule of thumb is, first of all, check all the items on the check that you get. Make sure you're not being charged for things you didn't order, which happens. He'll admit mistakes do happen. Second of all, if the service is really terrific, then I would tip a little more than 15%. But if the service isn't that good, I would tip less and let the waiter know why, and also let the person who's managing that restaurant know why. And don't be intimidated or embarrassed in the restaurant.
You've convinced
you're
me.
paying for it.
Thank you, John.
Huh?
Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Charles. Now, wait a minute. No, I think our magazine. Thank you, David.
Thank you for lunch, Gary. That was good. Not a bad menu here. There you go.
Dr. Rosenfeld updates his file about fever and what... Many of us tend to panic when either we or our children come down with a fever, but it may not always be a bad sign. And here to explain why is Dr. Isidore Rosenfeld. As you know, Dr. Rosenfeld is clinical professor of medicine in the cardiology division of New York Hospital, Cornell Medical Center, and author of the best-selling book, Second Opinion. You know, I was in London when our daughter was quite small and she got a fever. And of course, the minute it went up to 100, we panicked, called the doctor, called the doctor. He said, well, if it's just 100, don't worry. Call me if it gets around 105.
Yeah.
Well, that was it.
Good doctor.
We went to pieces.
Good doctor. Gets a lot
Really?
of sleep at night.
I'll bet he does. Yeah.
You know, it's
Is
a
it-
funny thing about fever. You can be as sick as anything, and you will not get sympathy from anyone, not from your wife, not from your friends, unless you can document it with fever. You can have aches and pains and have diarrhea and have whatever, but unless you have fever, nobody will be sympathetic to you. That's true.
I guess
Now, then
so. I
the
thought of
other
it that way.
curious thing is, the minute you get the fever, which is your proof for sympathy, you want to reduce it. You want to eliminate it. Now, what I wanted to talk about today was the thing that incenses patients most is when they call a doctor and they say, "Doctor, I'm very sick. I have fever." And the doctor says, "All right, get into a taxi and come down to the office and we'll examine it." And they say, "Get into a taxi with fever?" You see? And then that starts the whole thing. Doctors don't make house calls, even if you have a fever. Now, a fever is a symptom. It's not a disease. You can have fever due to many different causes, infections, heat stroke, and so on. I think there's too great a tendency for doctors and for patients to try to correct abnormalities which nature is providing for your defense. Take, for example, diarrhea. You go to on a vacation to some place where maybe the food isn't so clean, and you develop turista or diarrhea. and the first thing people do is take something to stop it. That diarrhea is nature's way of eliminating the toxin, the poison that you have eaten. Now, fever may be in that same category. I don't think that 3 or 4 points of fever constitutes a threat to anybody. I think there are certain exceptions. I think in children between 1 and 3, very high fevers can induce convulsions, and in those cases you have to lower it. But for the average run-of-the-mill fever because of an infection, I don't think one ought to be quick to treat it, and for several reasons. First of all, fever may be the doctor's only guideline as to whether the medication he's giving is effective. You have an infection of some kind. Let's say the infection is documented, we know what it is, we know what the bug is, and we give a certain antibiotic. If you rush to reduce the fever artificially with aspirin or that type of drug, Tylenol, and you reduce it not by virtue of having conquered or overcome the disease, but simply by reducing it artificially, you lose your landmark. You don't know whether it's the antibiotic that's doing it or the aspirin. So that's one reason, I think, not to rush into lowering fever. Now, there's another point that many doctors, including myself, believe that fever is one of the mechanisms that the body has to overcome the infection. Most organisms, most bacteria, most things that give you infection, don't thrive when the body temperature goes up. So the fever is a defense mechanism, and to lower it makes the body's job, nature's job, more difficult.
That's what the English doctor told me.
Yeah.
But what about, let's go back to the children for just a second. How high is high?
Well, you know, about a third of the children between 1 and 3 years of age will develop convulsions when the temperature is above 105. And in those circumstances, it ought to be reduced. Beyond the age of 5, I don't think that it's an important cause of convulsions. Now, there's several other questions. Oh, there's one other point that is very interesting. They found that what we call these antipyretics, the drugs that we use to lower temperature elevation, may interfere with interferon, which is that antiviral substance that the body produces. So that's another reason, another bit of evidence against lowering temperature capriciously, you might say.
Well, if you have to lower it, what's the best
Now,
way?
one other thing. They did an experiment with some volunteers. I don't know who would volunteer.
It must have been Norwegians.
Yes, that's right. But they put some cold viruses into the noses of volunteers, very brave and wonderful people. And they found that, and then they treated half of them. It's always half treated and half untreated, as you know, in these blind studies. They found that the volunteers who had their colds, which had been artificially given to them, treated with aspirin, they found that they were shedding much more virus. In other words, that the introduction of the aspirin really interfered with the body's ability to handle the infection. Now, if you've got to lower temperature, sometimes temperature elevation makes you feel poorly. I don't think that happens very often. I think when people blame the temperature elevation for feeling badly, it's the disease that they have and not the fever. Now, if you have to lower it, I personally am against ice packs, and I'm against rubbing alcohol. I think that causes too dramatic a drop in the blood pressure, and there have been reported cases of people going into shock. The best way is to use tepid sponging, sponging with tepid water. And then, of course, there are the aspirin and Tylenol group of drugs. I don't think there's any particular benefit of one versus the other. I think they're both effective. I think one ought to remember in children and in adults that when you're using aspirin, it's best not to give it more frequently than every 4 hours.
But am I correct? Did I hear you to say that in that study group that the use of aspirin prevented them from shedding the virus?
When the group that got the aspirin had much more virus, spreading the virus, coming out, and they were much more contagious in their environment, and it seemed to cause the disease to flare up. So I must tell you that in my own family and in my own case, with minor infections, colds, and so on, I don't rush to aspirin.
Are there cases where the fever just hangs on and hangs on? What's the normal course for
well,
fever?
you know, there are certain exceptions to what I've said. For example, heat stroke, where the body's mechanism for controlling fever goes completely awry. That's a different ballgame. I'm talking about the average temperature that you get with an upper respiratory thing. If fever persists, it can be due to anything. It can be due to cancer, to allergy, to some bizarre worm you've picked up somewhere, and then it needs a diagnostic evaluation.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rosenfeld, for being here. Very interesting information. We'll return in just a moment. Not sure where to take the family on your vacation this summer? Marty Leshner has some suggestions when we return. It's tough in life. If you're in a rut about vacations, I mean, always doing the same thing in the same place with the same people, do we have some great getaway answers for you? Our friend and travel advisor, Marty Leshner, the author of Trouble-Free Travel, is here to rescue you with some non-boring holidays. Nice to have you here, Marty.
Hi, Gary. Nice to be back. Thank you.
I sometimes wonder if we really think enough about a vacation. In other words, what we want out of a vacation. Generally, all we think of is, I gotta have a vacation, I just gotta go somewhere. But we should spend some time on thinking
I think so, because
it.
especially today when we're all, I think, a little bit more dollar conscious, that if you're not buying a car or a house, probably your vacation expense will be your single greatest expense this year. So I think it deserves as much time as you would spend buying an air conditioner or a refrigerator. And I think you have to take into account how many of you are going, since that will increase the cost of your getaway, where you want to go, how long you want to go for, and real importantly, Gary, the style in which you want to go. I mean, do you really want to rough it? Do you want to spend a little bit more money? Do you want to stay in big cities and stay at good hotels? Do you want to try inns and beds and breakfast and so forth?
Yeah. Well, I think money being as tight as it is today, do you have some ideas for a kind of short and inexpensive trips?
We have some terrific ideas, and especially at this time of year when people are thinking vacation. For example, theme parks, of which there are 30 throughout the United States, are a terrific getaway. Now, you may think that that's a day's outing, but what you should really do is plan in terms of a mini vacation, incorporating the theme park with some other attractions in the area. For example, we all know about Disneyland, which I guess is the granddaddy of theme parks. That's been around for 27 years. When you go to a theme park, especially with your families, remember that you have an opportunity to explore and experience shows, attractions, rides, beautiful landscaping, and for those of you who like to people watch, which I enjoy doing, what a wonderful place. Now, you may be people watching with 60,000 other people, which makes for some lines.
That's it. I think of Disneyland as standing in line.
I know, but see, there are some tips we can give you. First of all, in terms of economizing, that is, one of the real attractive notions about theme parks is most of them have incorporated one price, all-inclusive admission policies, which means for the price of your ticket or your child's ticket, you can spend as much of the day into oblivion or exhaustion, whichever comes first. A new innovation is that a number of theme parks have introduced two-day tickets, Gary, which means that you buy a ticket which is good for 2 consecutive days. It costs roughly 50% more, but you have twice as much time and can leisurely pace yourself. Remember the theme parks, and this is a really good tactical tip for those of you who are going with your family. Theme parks are strategically designed so that major attractions are in different parts of the park. Don't spend all your day crisscrossing the park trying to get from major...
It wears you out.
No.
Had a great time, but it wears you out.
It's a terrific idea, except that you are exhausted more earlier than you need to be. For example, get a You Are Here map that you get at the entrance. Pick a part of the park and work your way back. Take the park as it comes. And remember, when you're traveling with kids, I think it's a terrific idea to take some snacks with and to eat off hours. Remember, everybody's going to be waiting in those lines roughly around 12 to 1 for lunch. If you can go a little earlier, a little later, you'll avoid the lines.
All right, theme parks, great idea for short and inexpensive. What about going from, say, the city to outdoors? You want to go to the country?
The great outdoors. Yeah, well, we in the United States are extremely fortunate, and I think we too often take for granted the abundance of natural beauty. For example, the National Park Service, we have recreational areas, monuments, battlefields, incredible diversity of activities available. You can go to Yellowstone or Yosemite, the Grand Canyon. You know, when the park system was founded in 1872, Gary, one of the senators who was testifying on behalf of the bill said, "At last, a great breathing place for the national lungs." And for those of you who, like I, grew up in a big city, what a wonderful opportunity for you to nature hike, mountain climb, horseback ride, boat, fish, camp. It's advisable if you're going to any of the parks or any of the recreational areas in the United States that you call ahead or write ahead and find out about campsite availability, parking condition, transportation services.
Yeah. How about the other way around? Going from the country to the city? I guess what, New York, Los Angeles, New Orleans?
Here again, I think you can stretch your vacation dollars and stay in the United States. Remember that most hotels are crowded Monday through Friday. They operate at a very high occupancy level because they're packed with businessmen and businesswomen. Comes Friday afternoon, there's a mass exodus. Everyone wants to go home and join their families. So what hotels have instituted are weekender or family vacation plans. You will find that hotel rooms are discounted in many of the large cities as much as 40%. Some hotels will allow your kids to stay in the same room free. Others will charge a very nominal fee.
How would you find out this information about the hotels?
Best place always, of course, is to start with the travel professional who's your travel agent.
We've talked about cruises. Are there inexpensive cruises to go on?
Well, less expensive
Less
cruises.
expensive,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. However, one thing about cruises is...
Wear your snorkel equipment, right?
Right. One thing about cruises to keep in mind is, other than the fact that, of course, I am living proof that you gain weight. We've watched me gain and lose weight. Every time I come back from a cruise, I'm about 15 pounds heavier. I think that's the good news, by the way. The food is extraordinary. With regard to less expensive cruises, Gary, there are now 3-day cruises. You know, traditionally there were 7, 10, 12, 14. There are 3-day cruises, and you could take that, for example, from New York to Bermuda, Miami to Nassau, or Los Angeles to Ensenada in Mexico. It's a 3-day getaway.
Yeah. Sometimes that 3 days is better than 2 weeks someplace.
Oh, sure. And try to do something new in your life. I mean, if you love your beach home, still try to find something new to explore this summer.
Great advice, Marty. We'll be right back. Travel-minded Marty Leshner, who's got some great ideas and great gadgets as well. What do we got today?
Well, I think it's a good idea always to travel with some sort of shoulder bag in which you keep, for example, cosmetics, medications you require, eyeglasses, travel documents. This simply can, and this, by the way, can be used by men and women, and I like it especially because it's an expandable bag. We've already seen what it looks like folded.
Yeah, right.
You simply unzip it. And Gary, if you're traveling with kids and you're going to do a 1-day beach outing, isn't it terrific to have an expandable suitcase? Yeah, and you can see by the audience reaction, this is about $35, but I think it's very good for 1-day getaways with or without the kids. And the other thing is, if you're going to be shopping, what a terrific place to put all the acquisitions.
Yeah, it's called the Smuggler. That's terrific.
Okay.
All right. Next.
On my first trip to Europe, I put my shoes outside because I was told hall porters shine them, and I was traveling with a group of college kids, and I woke up the next morning and there was Eggs Benedict in my loafers. Since that time, I carry my own shoe shine kit. This one comes
with a knife and fork.
Or a knife and fork. Exactly. Okay, this one is a terrific gift for men and women, and it's about $20. And finally, if your breath bothers you on long trips, you can get a little case that consists of screw-on toothbrushes with toothpaste, and wonder of wonders, a little place for your mouthwash. You open this, add water, and there you are.
Terrific. Marty, thank you. And that closes another edition of Our Magazine. I'd like to thank all my guests. Join us tomorrow. Our Magazine's Kitchen will welcome for the first time the French chef Julia Child. Paula Nelson's going to be here to answer the financial question, why can't I buy or sell my house? You'll find out why a trip to the attic may prove you richer than you think. And my co-host Pat Mitchell will be here to discuss the dangerous effects of aggressive pornography. Until then, Gary Collins, along with Marty Leshner, reminding you to make every hour count and take a vacation.
Magic Chef makes a refrigerator that delivers ice and water right to your door.
Magic Chef gives you more time for good times.
Beautiful hair is my business. If you want beautiful hair, use Salon Formula Jerry Redding Milk and Honey Shampoo.
Jerry Redding from the salon to you.
The new Pop Air 2 from Hamilton Beach pops with hot air, not hot oil. Pop Air and Butter Up Popper from Hamilton Beach School.
There's 70 years of quality behind them.
From Daisy, Daisy's Foot Saver with heat and Daisy's Natural Wonder Hair Dryer. 2 ways Daisy is making life easier. The amazing Thermos brand Flip and Pour Stopper. Easy to open, easy to pour, easy to close. Only from Thermos. Pontiac's new 4-cylinder front-wheel drive J2000 wagon, sleek and streamlined with an impressive list of standard features. An exciting new way to take on a highway in style. Furnished by Pontiac.
Today at 4, he won't promise her the exclusive relationship she wants on Couples. At 4:30, Chubby Checker joins the hottest stars in Hollywood on Entertainment Tonight, here on Channel 5. Now, stay tuned for Norm Crosby on The John Davidson Show.